All right, welcome. I'm John Hazel, automation expert and business strategist.
And I'm Kevin Miller, software lead and seasoned podcaster.
And this is the Automate and Elevate podcast, where we help you build systems, create leverage, and scale your business.
On today's episode, we're going to dive into the three strategies to AI proof your skill set. How's it been going, John?
Good. It's been a busy week. A lot going on in the world.
Yeah, you're not lying. And, with so much going on, especially, in terms of the labor market, I know a lot of people are worried about how they're going to proceed going forward, how they could avoid being laid off. So I think today's episode is going to be really good to help give them some strategies going forward.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, yeah, just to give some backdrop to it, a lot of different companies, especially tech companies, they're laying off a lot of people, especially due to AI. So the skill set that many people have today, that's not necessarily going to keep them employable going forward. So, in just from your experience, what do you think are the new relevant skill sets? What do people need to know to be employable or to aid in their entrepreneurial pursuits?
Yeah. The way I see it, over the next decade, there's going to be three areas where you can have some solid moats in the business world. We talk about a moat for your business being something that protects the business long term, right? Like, hey, it's going to be hard for competition to cross over this moat and take away a bunch of your business because the moat is this wide or this deep, and here's those things, right? So for us as individuals and our skill sets, like, how do we create moats around our value? How do we make sure that we're providing the most economic value so that we can receive the most economic value, the most monetary value? And the way I see it, there's like three primary lanes, strategies, areas, whatever you want to call it. One that a lot of people are thinking of is just the trades, is like, okay, I'm going to go be an electrician, I'm going to go be a plumber, I'm going to go do these things outside of knowledge work, right? If knowledge work is basically everything that we currently produce economic value for and get paid for on our computers and devices, um, right now, those are the things that AI is coming for first, which is not what everybody expected. 50, 70 years ago, everybody thought robots were going to come first and take over, all of the manual labor things. And on some level, they have in the last couple hundred years with the industrial age and like bringing in all these machines that allow for, but there's always been a requirement for skilled labor because you just can't, it's just complex and expensive to build large machines to do to do these redundant tasks, right? And so especially when you're talking about moving around between people's houses and commercial real estate and all these things, like, it's robotics has just not gotten there where it can become general purpose yet. And so that's one area, is like, okay, what are the manual hands-on labor trades that I can step into? I can become an electrician, I can become all these different things, right? And I think that you have a pretty strong moat for about the next 15 to 25 years. Um, Eventually, the robotics are going to catch up and take over a lot of those roles, or make them more efficient, right? Um, the second area, I think, is I think that we're going to have more millionaires and billionaires created out of the AI era than probably ever. Like, more people are going to become very quickly wealthy that weren't before, and they're going to have a lot of disposable income to spend. So, what are things that those people are going to want to spend money on? 70 years ago, the concept of a place like Swig, which is now, there's like 150 locations across the US in a few different states. But if you haven't seen a Swig before, it's kind of like a Dutch Bros. It's like a drive up, drive around place where you get drinks, but they don't have coffee. They only have sodas, dirty sodas, and energy drinks. Just, yeah, caffeinated, carbonated things. So the reason Swig was created was because Mormons, like really devout Mormons, don't drink hot drinks like tea and coffee, and so they created a dirty soda restaurant type of place. And so, but this is like this kind of concept would have been ridiculous 100 years ago. Like, wait, so you're gonna go spend $10 on a soda? Like, how are you? It seems kind of ridiculous. And you're not even gonna sit down in a place to hang out. You're just gonna drive through. It's an interesting thing. So that to me is like the greater our GDP, the greater our economy, the more these like disposable income types of businesses become more and more valuable. So what are things that people are going to want to do with their disposable income now that a larger set of people are going to have more disposable income? Now, so that's the second area. The third area I would say is the people that can leverage AI the best. And this is in particular for the knowledge work space. Like if you're going to stay in knowledge work, if you're going to do things, if you're going to provide economic value, provide work on a computer, you need to be the best at using AI. And you don't even need to be like the best of the best. It's just if you're using AI in any kind of capacity greater than drafting emails, you're probably using AI better than like 70% of people that are using it. If you're using it to automate workflows, then you're using it better than 95% of people that are using AI right now. So, learning how to leverage AI, and you don't have to be on the cutting edge because it literally changes daily. But if you're using the things that got really good within the, like 6 months ago, if you're leveraging those things and you're good at strategy and thinking and ideating and figuring out how to prompt the AI in a way that's going to be the most effective, then you've got skill sets that are extremely valuable in this next era, right?
So let's just say for people who um, they don't necessarily want to go into trades and they may not necessarily have money to go to school to educate on, knowledge work. What do you think they'll be doing?
Yeah, I think it's well, the reason I lay out those three areas is so that you can think about where does my skill set translate to? Where can I, if I'm going to do an entrepreneurial venture, like what kinds of things? And I think the important thing here is to start off without trying to like pick apart each idea. A lot of times, what we do is we have an idea for a second and then we immediately start to figure out why it won't work. And we have to train our brain to just blue sky vision things, right? So the working genius is a great model that shows you how work gets done. And the first phase is ideation. You have wonder and invention. So you have to wonder about what's possible, and then you have to invent conceptually how you're going to get there. But a lot of times we skip the invention phase and we go, the second phase is activation. And in that activation phase, there's discernment and galvanizing. And we start to hit that discernment phase before we've even started inventing. And the key is to stay in that wonder phase, right? Like, don't worry about implementation, that's later. Don't worry about getting the right people and resources in place, that's later. Don't even worry about poking holes in the idea yet. Like, first, just get on front of a whiteboard. It's the cognitive function that Carl Jung coined called extroverted intuition, which is just like patterning in the real world. Get in front of a whiteboard and just write out what what could be possible. Let me and sometimes just stream of consciousness, like here's all my skill sets, right? If you don't have a whiteboard, a blank piece of paper, whatever you have in front of you, just start stream of consciousness, like here's the things I'm good at, here's the things I've done. And just start to write them out and then start to look at it and meditate on it and think about, is there anything in here that I could build a business out of or form a new skill set from these skill sets? Or is there any way that I could use AI to be even better at these things, right? And once you've kind of just spend like 20, 30 minutes, maybe even longer, just stream of consciousness, whatever comes to mind, writing stuff out. And sometimes, honestly, when I sit down to write, I have to just start typing gibberish. I just will literally be typing random. As long as I'm hitting the keyboard, then I've won for this writing session. And it may take me like 2 minutes to even start to form a cohesive thought on my keyboard. And then it may take 10 minutes to start to get a real direction, sometimes even 20 or 30 minutes. But eventually, if you're like honed in on that and you keep typing or keep writing with a pen or whatever interface you're using, eventually you start to come up with something cohesive, right? So when I say stream of consciousness, that's what I'm talking about, is like forcing yourself to start to write these things out. Because at first your brain is going to tell you, most of us struggle with imposter syndrome. And when we sit down to write about all the things that we've done and all the things we're good at, we're just going to look at the piece of paper and be like, I suck. I don't, I don't provide any value to this world. And it's like, well, you clearly do, because people have been paying you, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or whatever to do these things over the years. So there's value that you provide. And a lot of times it's tempting not to see that value. So if you just start to write those things out, and maybe you need to enlist help and ask somebody like, hey, what do you think I'm good at? And get outside perspectives, because we get skewed perspectives on ourselves, right? So start there, look at the things that you're good at, and then maybe take that entire document you've just written about the things that you've done well, the things that you feel you're good at, things that others say you're good at, and drop it in an AI chatbot and say, hey, um, what are the top 3, top 5 monetizable skills out of this list, right? And start to brainstorm with AI. How can I start to build a business? But the key here, AI is going to give you some crappy ideas, some average ideas, and occasionally a really great idea. But the main thing is not that you're trying to use AI as a guru to get the perfect thing out. The main thing is that you're brainstorming with AI and you start to hone in on it, and you say, no, I don't really like that. I actually enjoyed this more. And it's going to guide your thinking process so that you start to like mine out what are you the best at and what would you truly enjoy. And eventually you're trying to find like, what skill sets, what businesses, what activities do I enjoy the most and that I can be the most passionate about, right? And you start to bring, and then once you have that, it's crazy how fast you can get started. Last night, in less than an hour, I created a name for an app that I've had an idea for maybe the last year. Um, and I like brainstormed with Claude for a while to figure out that name. And then by the time I had created the name with Claude, I had all kinds of context in that chat about what this app idea is, why I'm passionate about it, what the long-term vision is. Like, there's all this kind of stuff by the time I had a name, that then I said, okay, now create the text for a slide deck. And then I dropped that in gamma.app and I created a slide deck for this business. And then I said, now create a text wireframe for a website. And I dropped that in lovable.dev and I had a website. And so in literally less than an hour, I had like some of these foundational pieces to building a business. And that's how fast you can move in this AI era if you're using the right prompts and the right set of tools. And so um, that's what I would but you have to find the thing that you're passionate about, right? And that's the thing that I wrestled with for a long time, is like, what app, what tool, what business can I really get behind? Um, and and you do that by stream of consciousness writing and then processing it with friends and with AI, right?
So, like, let's kind of dive into, you know, in order for people to purchase your services, people have to have money. So, kind of going forward, I think we're entering into an economic climate where a smaller sector has more of the resources. So, like you mentioned earlier, you're gonna have to create something that caters to them, whether it's entertainment or even something practical. So, like, just from your standpoint, what are some of those avenues that people should be looking in and considering that would get that sector of people spending money?
Yeah, that's good. Well, there's a term out there, the 7 mountains of influence. And so there's basically 7 mountains where influence is. And so you've got the mountain of business, you've got the mountain of government, the mountain of religion, the mountain of family, the mountain of media, the mountain of celebration, and then finally, I always, anytime you're listing a list off of like five or more, you always forget one of them. Business, government, religion, family, media, celebration. Now I'm gonna have to look it up. I'll come up with it here in a second. Um, but anyway, you've got these different mountains of influence, and so you have to kind of look at like what's the area where I'm supposed to be, where I'm supposed um, to have influence on the world, on the economy, on my local environment. And then you can kind of go from there. But that's a model that kind of helps you hone in and say where am I the most passionate, right? Now, of course, within the mountain of business, you've got all of these different industries, right? Like you could say, okay, you just listed off basically like six industries and then a catch-all industry of business. And it's like, yeah, basically. But what is, where are you the most passionate? And then once you know where you're going and I think your question, are you asking more of like, how do you do this when you feel like you don't have any money to start a business, or you're asking, how do you find something that people are going to pay for?
Yeah, I guess both aspects are important because you have to know what they're spending it on, and you also have to know how to do it if you don't necessarily have the resources to dump like a ton of resources to dump into that endeavor. So, yeah, I guess we could start with that aspect first.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, the seventh mountain is education. I don't know how I could forget that one, but that's just how it goes. You can't, you never remember them all, even when you know them. So yeah, I think um, the first thing is like if you have even if you don't have a device, even if you are homeless, if you're living in a significantly sized American city, you most likely have access to libraries that have computers that you can get on and start things. And you can sign up for all kinds of accounts for free. Now, there's limitations on, if you sign up on lovable.dev to build a website, you sign up on gamma.app to build slide decks, sign up on ChatGPT, like all these things have limitations to how much you can use them and how, and like what features you have access to. But really, you can do a lot of these different things for free just to get started. You can even publish websites for free on lovable.dev, on I think on Replit, on a lot of these different things. So um, you can get started there, and then the other thing you can do for free is talk to people. You can go at the library, you could go on a computer, you can go on meetup.com and find different locations where people are, where there's networking meetings happening, business networking, and anything in your specific industry potentially. But just search on those things. Meetup is an easy way to do that. Of course, there's like Facebook groups and things, but um, those are some of the things you can get started with. And you're at that point, you're looking for if you don't have a clear business strategy and idea and plan, then you're just looking for people to process with and to figure out what that's going to be. If you do know how you plan to make money, then you're looking for that first dollar. And you have to be careful because you don't want to go into these contexts just clearly like money hungry, sales focused. You want to listen first, right? You're there to listen to what people's needs are and then think about, does does my business fit into that in some way, or does my skill set or the thing, is this someone that potentially could hire me? Do I have skill sets that bring them value in their business? You want to think about those things, but first you want to look to give and to serve and to help. There's a great book that illustrates this concept very well called The Go Giver, and it's really like if you're focusing on giving first, it's amazing the harvest that you get when you're sowing seeds to help people. The returns start to come naturally. So um, that's where I would start initially when you don't have money. As far as things that people will pay for, I think we have. a thing that AI is not used for very often is product market research. And you really can validate your market pretty quickly and easily with AI because it's trained on the entire internet. And so it kind of has a rough awareness of the the markets that are available. And it can also do research for you very fast. You can usually use the basic search function on these AI chatbots, but they also usually have a deep research function where it will go for like 10 or 20 minutes and search the web and validate, is there product market fit for the product or service that you're wanting to provide? And if so, where is that? Is it like primarily in major metroplexes? Is it primarily in out in the rural areas or the suburbs? Is it primarily in California or other part? Like, you can kind of figure that stuff out if you just ask the right questions with AI, and then figure out like, okay, so where do I need to focus my attention on creating presence where people can find me, and so that I can make that first dollar. And the other thing I would say is like hone in your messaging. So you can work with AI and say like, this is my idea. Now help me develop a story brand script so that I'm very clear in the story that I'm telling of how I can help my client, who is the hero of the story. How I can step in as the guide and guide them to success and a transformation for them personally and for their business. Right. So that's a lot there, but there you go.
Okay, so like just take a business for example, even technology. You have one great employee, and this employee handles a ton of stuff, but the issue is you become dependent on that employee, and your organization becomes fragile. If they leave, there's a huge gap. The company stops running for a while until you can find someone to replace them. So if you're building your company on AI agents, how do you prevent your company from becoming fragile? Let's just say the price of subscriptions becomes really, really expensive. Like how do you safeguard from, having your business explode if something changes, on in the AI landscape?
Okay. Yeah. Um, well, I can say that the price is not going to go up. The price is going to continue to go down because there's really strong competition, and this is just how things go. Things get commoditized. We now like a vacuum cleaner that we buy now that is better than like the Kirby's and the Hoovers of the world 30 years ago, which people would door to, I think it was Kirby that would like door to door sell. I remember a guy like coming to, and he was in our house, and my mom like she was kind of like too non-confrontational to say, no, I'm not interested, please leave. And so this guy's in our house for like an hour or two showing all of the features of this Kirby vacuum, and trying to show how this other like Hoover vacuum that we had just bought like months before is actually crap, and is like making my mom feel bad about the purchase of all this stuff, right? Like these vacuums were hundreds of dollars, which was more, $200 or whatever back then was like 600, $800 now or more. So they're like expensive, and now we buy a $50 vacuum on Amazon that's better than all of those vacuums 25 years ago. And when it starts to smell bad or something breaks on it, like we just buy a new one because it costs more to try and fix it than it does to buy a new one, right? So that's just the way the world economy works, is that things will get cheaper and cheaper. Now there's certain things that do obviously, like gas fluctuates, and gas gets more expensive right now. Like it wasn't that long ago I spent I mean, like within the last year, gas prices had soared downward, and I spent like $1.39 a gallon at Costco. And now we're up to like 360 in Colorado Springs. And that's cheap compared to what California is dealing with and others, right? And so there's things in the global economy that impact these things. But as a general rule, I think for these technologies, the price continues to go down because of competition, because of the commoditization, and things get cheaper and cheaper. China figures out how to manufacture the silicon cheaper, whatever happens, right? So um, anyway, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. I would um, I think the main concern that we should have is becoming irrelevant. Um, and I think there's some strong cautionary tales in, companies like Blockbuster is the obvious one, right? Because it was so focused on a specific service that was tied to a technology that could easily be trumped, and then they didn't think about the next stage in the future. And Netflix has focused obviously very well on what's coming, what's next, right? And they saw how the world, our areas had become globalized in the realm of business in the last 70 years, and that was getting more and more at home. So as more people get on the internet more times throughout the day, we're connecting more and more with people outside of our local area and our own country. And so Netflix said, let's focus on internationalization of media because there's great entertainment being created all around the world and people just haven't discovered it yet. So let's focus on this, right? So they went from DVDs to streaming to creating their own content in-house to internationalizing content, and they just continue to look at what's around the corner, how do we adapt, right? And so I think in every business we need to kind of focus on this. Don't get too comfortable on what's working for you now and think about what's working for you next. You don't have to spend all your time thinking about it, but you know a little bit of percent of your time each week should go to what's next for my company. And yes, like tech stacks break, right? You create an automation and then something goes wrong with it and it's got to be maintained, right? Like that's just always going to be there, and so you have to always budget for, if I'm building my company on AI agents, how am I, one, building in quality assurance to make sure that it's not going off the rails and hallucinating something and throwing all my confidential data out on the web or whatever. Two, so there's like guardrails and QA there. Two is maintenance, just knowing I'm going to need technical maintenance, budgeting time and resources for that as well. Um, so I know you're saying like, okay, if you rely completely on a human employee and you don't have them documenting and like training other people, and then they leave, and then you've got this big hole in your business. And I think what you're saying is the same thing can happen with AI agents, where you're relying completely on it, and then something breaks down. The model change. That's like one of the bigger threats, is that when a new model is released, the way it functions is often very different from the last model. This is becoming less and less so, because the models have gotten so good. Like the jump between GPT 3.5 to GPT 4.0 was to GPT 4 was massive, and 4 to 4.0 was massive. And but now, like, it's very incremental changes, and so I don't find having to adjust as much between some of the models that have been released in the last year. But like my prompting from GPT 3.5 versus my prompting now is completely different, right? So there is a level where a model change can heavily impact your business. Luckily, the frontier model companies are supporting models now, often like a year to 2 years back. You still need to like continue to move forward, but usually you have 6 to 18 months to figure out how to adapt your process to the new model. And you just want to make sure that's a priority so you don't end up on a deprecated piece of technology, right? As with everything else in the tech sector.
Awesome. I think that's a great note to end this one on. Before we end this episode, did you want to leave the audience with any closing thoughts?
I think the thing that I is always on my mind is just empowering people. Like, you can do this. You can figure this out. If you're motivated, if you're hungry, if you know what you want, I can help you build the systems, create the leverage, and scale your business up. So let's chat. Hit me up at johnhazel.com, and John at johnhazel.com is my direct email. And I'd love to chat and see if there's anything I can help you with. And I believe in you. You got this.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch y'all